Okay, hi guys, welcome back to the BFG by Roald Dahl. We're on chapter. Oh, good question. Just double check. We are on chapter 11, which is Journey to Dream Country. All Roald Dahl's own work. Let's get reading. Journey to Dream Country. After the mad Frobscottle party was over, Sophie settled herself again on top of the enormous table. You is feeling better now? Asked Big Friendly Giant. Much better, thank you, Sophie said. Whenever I is feeling a bit scrotty, the BFG said. A few gallops of Frostscottles always make me hopscotchy again. I must say it's quite an experience, Sophie said. It's a Raswitzer, said the BFG. It's gloriumptious. He turned away and strode across the cave, picked up his dream-catching net. I is galloping off now, he said, to catch some more wopsy-whiffling dreams from my collection. I is doing this every day without missing. Is you wishing to come with me? Not me. Thank you very much, Sophie said. Not with those other giants lurking outside. I is snuggling you very closely into the pocket of my waistcoat, the BFG said, and no one is seeing you. Before Sophie could protest, he had picked her up off the table and popped her into the waistcoat pocket. There was plenty of room in there. Is you wishing for a little hole to peep from? He asked her. There is one here already, she said. She had found a small hole in the pocket, and when she put one eye close to it, she could see out very well indeed. She watched the BFG as he bent down and filled his suitcase with empty glass jars. He closed the lid, picked up suitcase in one hand, took the pole with the net on the end with the hand, and marched towards the entrance of the cave. As soon as he was outside, the BFG set off across the great hot yellow wasteland, where the blue rocks lay and the dead trees stood, and where the other giants were skulking about. Sophie, squatting low on her heels in the pocket of the leather waistcoat, had one eye glued to the little hole. She saw the group of enormous giants about 300 yards ahead. Hold your breath, said the BFG whispered down to her. Cross your fingers. Here we go. We is going right past those other giants. Is you seeing that whopping great one? The one nearest to us. I see him, Sophie whispered back, quivering. That is the horriblest of them all, and the biggest of them all. He is called flesh lump eating giant. I don't want to hear about him, Sophie said. He is 54 feet high, the BFG said softly as he jogged along, and he is swallowing human beings like they is sugar lumps. 2 or 3 at a time. You're making me nervous, Sophie said. I is nervous myself, the BFG whispered. I always get as jumpy as a jog hopper when the flesh eater giant is around. Keep away from me, and keep away from him, Sophie pleaded. Not possible, the BFG answered. He is galloping easily 2 times as quickly as me. Shall we turn back? Sophie said. Turning back is worse, said the BFG. If they is seen running away, they is giving a chase and throwing rocks. They would never eat you, though, would they? Sophie asked. The giants is never quizzling other giants, the BFG said. They is fighting and squirreling a lot with each other, but never guzzling. Human beings is more tasty to them. The giants had already spotted the BFG, and all the heads were turned, watching him as he jogged forward. He was able to pass well to the right of the group. Through their little peephole, Sophie saw the flesh-lump-eating giant moving over to intercept them. He didn't hurry. He just lopped over casually to a point where the BFG would had to pass. The others locked up to him. Sophie counted 9 of them altogether, and she recognised the blood bottler in the middle of them. They were bored. They had nothing to do until nightfall. There was an air of menace about them as they loped slowly across the plain with long lolloping strides, heading for the BFG. Here comes the runty one, boomed the flesh on Peter. Oh ho! There, runty one, where is you splash winkling away into such a hefty hurry? He shot out an enormous arm and grabbed the BFG by the hair. The BFG didn't struggle. He simply stopped and stood quite still and said, Be kind as to be letting go of my hair, Flesh Lumpeter. Flesh Lumpeter released him and stepped back a pace. The other giants stood round, waiting for fun to start. "Now then, you little grub squiffler," boomed the flesh lump eater. "We is all wanting to know where you was galloping off to every day in the daytime. Nobody ought to be galloping off to anywhere until it is getting dark. The human beings could easily be spotting you and starting to giant hunt, and we is not wanting that to happen, is we not?" "We is not," shouted the other giants. "Go back to your cave, Runty Run." "I is not galloping to any human being country," the BFG said. "I is going to other places." "I is thinking," said the flesh lump eater, "that you is catching human beings and keeping them as pets." "Right you is, the blood bottler," cried the blood bottler. "Just now I is hearing him chittering away to one of them in his cave. You is welcome to go back and search my cave from front to front," the BFG answered. "You can go looking into every crook and nanny. There is no human beans, nor stringy beans, nor runner beans, or jelly beans, or any other beans in here." Sophie crouched still as a mouse inside the BFG's pocket. She hardly dared breathe. She was terrified she might sneeze. The slightest sound or movement would give her away. Through the tiny peephole she watched the giants clustering round the poor BFG. How revolting they were! All of them had piggy little eyes and enormous mouths. When the flesh lump eater was speaking, she got a glimpse of his tongue. It was black, like a slab of black steak. Every one of them was more than twice as tall as the BFG. Suddenly the flesh lump eater shot out an enormous hand and grabbed the BFG around the waist. He tossed him up high in the air and shouted, "Catch him, man-hugger!" The man-hugger caught him. The other giants spread out quickly in a large circle, each giant about 20 yards from his neighbour, preparing for the game they were going to play. Now the manhunter threw the BFG high and fast, shouting, "Catch him, Bone Cruncher!" The Bone Cruncher ran forward and caught the tumbling BFG and immediately swung him up again. "Catch him, Chid Chewer!" he shouted. And so it went on. The giants were playing ball with the BFG, vying with each other to see who would throw him the highest. Sophie dug her nails into the sides of the pocket, trying to prevent herself from tumbling out when she was upside down. She felt as though she were in a barrel going over the Niagara Falls, and all the time was the fearful danger that one of the giants would fail to catch the BFG and she would go crashing to the ground. "Catch him, meat tripper! Catch him, gizzard gulper! Catch him, vein masher! Catch him, blood water! Catch him! Catch him! Catch him!" In the end they got bored with this game. They dumped the poor BFG on the ground. He was dazed and shattered. They gave him a few kicks and shouted, "Run, you little run! Let us be seeing how fast you is galloping." The BFG ran. What else could he do? The giants picked up rocks and hurled them after him. He managed to dodge them. "Run, little run!" they shouted. "Troggy little twit, shrivelly little shrimp, mucky little midget, squodgy little squib, grubby little grub." At last the BFG got clear of them, and all in another couple of minutes the pack of giants was out of sight and over the horizon. Sophie popped her head up from the pocket. "I didn't like that," she said. "Phew!" said the BFG. "Few and far between. They was in a nasty cotching mood today. Was they not? I is sorry you was having such a whirligig time." "No worse than you," Sophie said. "Would they ever really hurt you?" "I isn't really ever trusting them," the BFG said. "How do they actually catch human as they eat?" Sophie asked. "They is usually just sticking an arm in through the bedroom window and snitching them from their beds," the BFG said. "Like you did to me." "Ah, but I isn't eating you," the BFG said. "How else do they catch them?" Sophie asked. "Sometimes," the BFG said, "they is swimming in from the sea like fishes with one of their heads showing above the water, and then out comes a big hairy hand and grabs someone off the beach." "Children as well?" "Often chidlers," the BFG said. "Little chidlers who is building sandcastles on the beach. That is who swim melting ones are. The little chidlers is not so tough to eat as old grandmama, but so says the child chewing giant." As they talked, the BFG was galloping fast over the land. Sophie was standing right up in his waistcoat pocket now and holding onto the edge with both hands. Her head and shoulders were in the open and the wind was blowing in her hair. "How else do they catch people?" she asked. All of them is having their own special ways of catching the human being, the BFG said. The meat dripping giant is preferring to pretend he is a big tree growing in the park. He is standing in the park in the dusty evening, and he is holding great big branches over his head. And there is waiting until some happy families is coming to have picnic under the spreading tree. The meat dripping giant is waiting, watching them as they lay out their picnic. But in the end, it is the meat dripper who is having the picnic. It's too awful, the Sophie cried. The gizzard-gulping giant is a city lover, the BFG went on. The gizzard-gulper is lying high up in between the roofs of houses in the big cities. He is lying there as snugly as a sniggler and watching the human beings walking on the street below. And when he sees one that looks like it has Wopsy God flavour, he grabs it. He is simply reaching down and snatching it off the street like a monkey taking a nap. He says it's nice to be able to pick and choose what you is having for your supper. He says it's like choosing from a menu. Don't you ever see him doing it? Sophie asked. Never is they seeing him. Do not forget it is dusky dark at this time. Also, the gizzard gulper has a very fast arm. His arms are going up and down quicker than sprinkers. But if all these people are disappearing every night, surely there is some sort of outcry, Sophie said. The world is a whopping big place, the BFG said. It has 100 different countries. The giants is clever. They is careful not to be skiddling off to the same country too often. They is always switch fiddling around. Even so, Sophie said. Do not forget, the BFG said, that human beings is disappearing everywhere all the time, even without the giants is guzzling them up. Human beings is killing each other as much quicker than the giants is doing it. They don't eat each other, Sophie said. Giants is not eating each other either, the BFG said. Nor is giants killing each other. Giants is not very lovely, but they is not killing each other. Nor is crocodile dillies killing other crocodile dillies. Nor is pussycats killing pussycats. They kill mice, Sophie said. Ah, but they is not killing their own kinds, the BFG said. Human beings is the only animals that is killing their own kinds. Don't don't poisonous snakes kill each other? Sophie asked. It was searching. She was searching desperately for another creature that behaved so badly as the human. Even poisonous snakes is never killing each other, the BFG said. Nor is the most fearsome creatures like tigers and rhinoceros None of them is ever killing their own kind. Have you ever thought about that? Sophie kept silent. I is not understanding human beings at all, the BFG said. You as a human being, you is saying it is grisly and horrible for giants to be eating human beings. Right or left? Right, Sophie said. But human beings are squishing each other all the time, the BFG said. They are shooting guns and going up into the airplanes to drop their bombs on each other's heads every week. Human beings is always killing other human beings. He was right. Of course he was right, and Sophie knew it. She was beginning to wonder whether humans were actually any better than giants. Even so, she said, defending her own race, I think it's rotten that those foul giants should go off every night to eat humans. Humans have never done them any harm. This is what the Piggly is saying every day, the BFG asked. He is saying, why, he's never done any harm to a human being, so why should he be eating me? Oh dear, Sophie said. The human beings is making rules to suit themselves, the BFG went on. But the rules they is making do not suit the Piggy Wiggies. Am I right or left? Right, Sophie said. Giants is also making rules. The rules is not suiting the human beings. Everybody is making his own rules to suit himself. But you don't like it that those beastly giants are eating humans every night, do you? Sophie asked. Are you not? The BFG answered firmly. One right is not making two left. Is you quite cosy down there in my pocket? I'm fine, Sophie said. Then suddenly, once again, the BFG went into that magical top gear of his. It began hurtling forward with phenomenal leaps. His speed was unbelievable. The landscape became blurred again, and Sophie had to duck down out of the whistling gales to save her head from being blown off her shoulders. She crouched in the pocket and listened to the wind screaming in the past. It came knifing through the tiny peephole in the pocket and whooshed around her like a hurricane. But this time the BFG didn't stay in top gear long. It seemed as though he had some barrier to cross, a vast mountain perhaps, or an ocean, or a great desert. But having crossed it, He once again slowed down to his normal gallop, and Sophie was able to pop her head up and look out once more at the view. She noticed immediately that they were now in an altogether paler country. The sun had disappeared above a film of vapour. The air was becoming cooler every minute. The land was flat and treeless, and there seemed to be no colour in it at all. Every minute the mist became thicker, the air became colder still, and everything became paler and paler until soon there was nothing but grey and white all around them. They were in a country of swirling mists and ghostly vapours. There was some sort of grass underfoot, but it was not green, it was ashy grey. There was no sign of a living creature and no sound at all, except for the soft thud of the BFG's footsteps as he hurtled on through the fog. Suddenly he stopped. "Where is he at last? We is here at last," he announced. He bent down and lifted Sophie from his pocket and put her on the ground. She was still in her nightie and her feet were bare. She shivered and stared around at the swirling mists and the ghostly vapours. "Where are we?" she asked. "We is in Dream Country," the BFG said. "This is where all dreams is beginning." Next chapter, Dream Catching. The big family giant put the suitcase on the ground. He bent down low so that the enormous face was still close to Sophie's. "From now on we is keeping as still as winky little miceies," he whispered. Sophie nodded. The misty vapour swirled around her. It made cheeks damp and left dewdrops in her hair. The BFG opened the suitcase and took out several empty jars. He set them readily on the ground with their screw tops removed. Then he stood up very straight. His head was now high in the swirling mist, and it kept disappearing and then appearing again. He was holding the long net in his right hand. Sophie, staring upwards, saw through the mist that his colossal ears were beginning to swivel out from his head. They began waving gently to and fro. Suddenly the BFG pounced. He leaped high in the air and swung the net through the mist with a great swishing sweep of his arm. "Got him!" he cried. "A jar! A jar! Quick! Quick!" Sophie picked up a jar and held it up to him. He grabbed hold of it. He lowered the net. Very carefully he took something absolutely invisible from the net into the jar. He dropped the net and swiftly clapped one hand over the jar. "The top! The top!" he whispered. "The jar! Top! Quick!" Sophie picked up the screw top and handed it to him. He screwed it on tight, and the jar was closed. The BFG was very excited. He held the jar close to one ear and listened intently. "It's a wink squiffler," he whispered with a thrill in his voice. It's even better. It's a fizz wizard. It's a golden fizz wizard." Sophie stared at him. Oh my, said, holding the jar in front of him. "This'll be giving some little toddler a very happy night when I is blowing it in." "It really is a good one," Sophie asked. "A good one," he cried. "It's a fizz wizard. It's not often I is getting one of these." He handed the jar to Sophie. "Please be a starfish now. I was thinking there may be a whole swarm of fizz wizards up here today. And do kindly stop breathing. You is terribly noisy down there." "Haven't moved a muscle," Sophie said. "Then don't," said the BFG, answered sharply. Once again he stood up tall in the mist, holding his net at the ready. Then came to a long silence, the waiting, the listening, and at last, with surprising suddenness, came a leap and the swish of a net. "Another jar!" he cried. "Quick, quick, quick!" When the second dream was safely in the jar and the top was screwed down, the BFG held it to his ear. "Oh no!" he cried. "Oh mince my maggots! Oh swipe my swallows!" "What's the matter?" Sophie asked. "It's a trouble humper!" he shouted. His voice was filled with fury and anguish. "Oh save our solos!" he cried. "Deliver us from weasels! The devil is dancing on my dibbler!" "What are you talking about?" Sophie said. The BFG was getting more distressed every moment. "Oh, bash my eye bones!" he cried, waving the jar in the air. "I come this way to get lovely golden dreams, and what is I catching?" "What are you catching?" Sophie said. "I is catching a frightsome trouble humper," he cried. "That is a bad dream. It's worse than a bad dream. It's a nightmare." "Oh dear," Sophie said. "What will you do with that?" "I is never letting it go," the BFG cried. "If I do, then some poor little toddler will be having the most curb-blooding time. It's a real kisky bog thumper. I is exploding it as soon as I get home." "Nightmares are horrible," Sophie said. "I had one once and I woke up sweating all over." "With this one you would wake up screaming all over," the BFG said. This one will make your teeth stand on end. If you got into you, your blood would be freezing to icicles and your skin would be going creeping across the floor. Is that bad? It's worse, cried the BFG. This is a real whoopsie grub switcher. You said it was a trouble humper, Sophie told him. It is a trouble humper, cried the exasperated BFG. But it's also a bog humper and a grub switcher. It's all three riddled into one. Oh, I am so glad I was clutching it tight. Ah, you wicked beastie, you, he cried, holding up the jar and staring into it. Never more is you going to be bug-toddling the poor human weeny toddlers. Sophie, who was staring into the glass jar, cried out, I can see it, there's something in there. Of course, there's something in there, the BFG said. Who was looking at frightsome trouble humper? But you told me dreams were invisible. They is always invisible until they is captured, the BFG told her. After that they is losing a little of their invisibility. We are seeing this one very clearly. Inside the jar, Sophie could see the faint scarlet outline of something that looked like a mixture between blob of gas and bubble of jelly. It was moving violently, thrashing against the sides of the jar and forever changing shape. It's wiggling all over the place, Sophie cried. It's fighting to get out. It'll bash itself to bits. The nastier dream, the angrier it's getting when it's imprisoned, the BFG. It's the same as with wild animals. If an animal is very fierce and you is putting it in a cage, it will make a tremendous rumpus. If it is a nice animal like the cockatoo or a frog or frog, it will sit quietly. Dreams is exactly the same. This one is a nasty, fierce, bog-rotting nightmare. Just look at him, splashing himself against the grass. It is quite frightening, Sophie cried. I would be hating to get this one inside me on the darksome nights, the BFG said. So would I, Sophie said. The BFG started putting the bottles back into the suitcase. Is that all? Sophie asked. Are we going? I am so upset by this trouble-humping, bog-thumping grub switcher, the BFG said, that I am not wishing to go on. Dream catching is finished for the day. Soon Sophie was back on the waistcoat pocket and the BFG was racing home as fast as he could go. When at last they emerged out of the mist and came again onto the hot yellow wasteland, all the other giants were sprawled out on the ground fast asleep. Okay, I was going to read the next chapter, but I'm running out of time on my um, on my recording thing. I only have a certain memory, so I'm going to stop it there. But there would just be something to look forward to. So thank you again for listening. I hope you're enjoying these videos. I've noticed they're getting a few more views, which is quite nice. I mean, not many, but it's much more than I've ever had. So thank you for all your support again. And until the next time, guys. Bye.